Um, Very good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining with us on behalf of entire Ganpat University. We welcome you all to the world of entrepreneurship, a webinar with entrepreneurs where we uncover their stories, challenges, and success. I humbly extend my gratitude to Honorable Dr. Mahendra Sharma, Pro-Chancellor, Director General, Ganpat University. Sir, you hardly need any introduction. You have made all of us very proud by your distinguished work in numerous capacities. A man with distinct vision and fountainhead of illuminating ideas. Thank you so much, sir, for your presence and constant support. At Ganpat University, we provide an entire ecosystem for startup and entrepreneurs. We have a well-defined Center for Entrepreneurship, which is dedicated to nurture the business ideas through entrepreneurship development programs and training. We have in-house Startup and Incubation Center, which is Nodal Institute for Student Startup and Innovation Policy, Government of Gujarat, where students can access funding opportunities. We also have highly specialized focused MBA course in startup and entrepreneurship. It is very different from any other course since it focuses on milestone-based learnings, business opportunity mapping, design thinking through innovation, enterprise scalability, and diversification. The World of Entrepreneurship webinar series was conceived to celebrate the journey of entrepreneurs who have successfully taken their ventures from 0 to 1 and subsequently scaled them, who have created great disruptions in their respective industries through grit and inspired leadership. Today on this platform, we have more than 200 plus participants, out of which we have more than 150 students registered, 50 academicians, faculty members, alumni, more than 5 industry professionals we are covering more than 35 cities in and across India. Also, we have joined with University of Africa, so we have faculty members from there as well. We bring to you exclusive opportunity to interact and learn from established and experienced entrepreneurs with more than 10 years of rich and hardcore business experience. Today, we are honored to have with us Managing Director of one of the most oldest and most trusted real estate companies in India, Bakeri Group and Bakeri Engineering Infrastructure Private Limited, Shri Pavan Bakeri ji. We are fortunate to have you, sir, today to enlighten young, passionate, and entrepreneurial minds. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation and joining us today.
Thank you, Dr. Mitra, for that wonderful introduction. And good afternoon to all the participants. I was very thrilled when Professor Mitra informed me that there are close to 200 students and faculty and parents participating, most of them students. And it's always a pleasure to be interacting with students, no matter where they are, and especially students of Ganpat University, with which I have a close contact and close touch. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And for me, it's a learning session as well. So I do hope to learn, that's the objective of my interaction with students anywhere that they are in the world. And I have not been disappointed ever. So, so that's why I readily agreed to you, Professor Mitra, for, for giving this, for interacting with the students. And, because as I keep telling people, I'm a very selfish sort of person. I won't say yes unless there's something in it for me. And with students, there's always something in it for me, so thank you. Yeah. So you'll have to excuse me for half a second until I bring my presentation.
Definitely. And even so till then, Bakeri sir continues, I would even like to tell you that on the panel, we are glad to have the august presence of Dr. Rajen Purohit, Executive Dean, Ganpat University, Dr. Saurabhi Chaturvedi, Dean, Faculty of Management Studies, Dr. Saurabh Dave, Dean, Student Startup and Incubation Center, Dr. Hiren Patel, Principal, VM Patel Institute of Management. We also have with us Dr. Morvi Vasavda ma'am, Chairperson, Center for Management Studies. Over to you. We begin with, let us just uncover the entrepreneurial journey of Shri Pavan Bakeri, sir. Yes, sir.
So participants, I would really welcome questions at the end of my presentation. We are all going through exceptional times. And when Professor Mitra, well, initially I was under the impression that, I would be addressing students of entrepreneurship and management, the master's and the bachelor students. But when she said, well, a lot of them are engineers, I kind of modified my presentation and tailored it a bit more towards science and engineering. And I also hope that some of you who have got a management background, who are students of management, you also have studied engineering. Though this is a general presentation, so I'm not really delving too much into the math, but I like to relate concepts, management concepts, to math and science. So here goes. When I was said, okay, it's an entrepreneurial journey, I said, well, the 21st century is very, very different from the centuries past. We have had the rise of the internet, the rise of artificial intelligence, automation, and it's like the turn of the 20th century, when the telegraph was invented, when Edison invented the when electricity was invented, and the light bulb was invented towards the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century, when cars were manufactured on a large scale by Ford, assembly line manufacturing. I think we are on the cusp of a revolution. We have already been, so to speak, revolutionized. And the pandemic, the COVID-19 has also further impacted on the way we do things. So that's the the catch line of my talk today. The future is not what it used to be. The future, what we thought it was 2 months ago, it's not the same future that we have today. So I'll be sharing a few of my thoughts on what it is to be an entrepreneur in the 21st century, especially given our experience of the last 2-3 months, which none of us in our lifetimes, or even in our father's lifetimes, we have not experienced. So what is the new normal that is going to come? So I'll be sharing my thoughts on the shape of the new normal, the next normal, I would like to say. So what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? Entrepreneur is a French word. It's a conjugation of 2 words, it's a sandhi of 2 words, if you will, entre and preneur. So entreprendre is actually somebody who takes up something and sees it all the way. Just like an entrepreneur, they have an idea, they seize the idea, they take up an idea, and then they implement it and they see that idea, till the end of the day, throughout. So that is what it means to be an entrepreneur. It has a dictionary meaning. I will begin with a 3-body problem. I think many of you are aware of the concept of a 3-body problem in mathematics and physics. So what is the 3-body problem? We all know of 2 bodies, in physics, in high school physics, we have studied the laws of gravitational attraction. And we know that 2 objects at a distance, they attract each other and they exert a force on each other, which is directly proportional to their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distances between them. But what is a 3-body problem? So imagine we have 3 massive objects in space in the same system, in the same planar system, in the same solar system, or in the same galaxy. They could be stars or planets or some such. None of them can escape from each other's gravitational pull because they are close enough. So their positions, mass, speed, and direction of travel for each of these objects individually is known. Okay, we also know how gravity works. That's pretty much well known, since the days of Newton, since he published his book, Philosophy Naturalis Principia Mathematica in 1687. So we know all of this pretty well since more than 350 years. We also know how precisely each of these 3 objects is acting on the other 2 objects. So if we have a formula with which we can predict where these objects will be at some point in the future. Okay, so if we had 2 objects, only 2 objects, we can predict where the other object would be at some point in the future. We can define that point could be 1 light year from now, 100 million years from now, 5 million years from now, or 5 years from now. But actually, if you have 2 objects, you can, but with a 3-object problem, you cannot. It's just too complicated. The math just does not exist. Okay, so So the three-body problem was first formulated by this French mathematician, physician, Henri Poincaré in 1887. He lived from 1854 to 1912, and he was a very celebrated mathematician of his times. So he contributed a lot to the field of mathematics, based on which a lot of physics evolved and computers evolved based on physics. So much of 20th century and 21st century developments have been attributed to these kind of mathematicians of the 19th century and the early 20th century, mathematicians and physicists. He proved that the motion of three objects is non-repeating. So there is no pattern. There is just absolutely, you cannot predict where it is going to be when they are influencing each other. So, so if we have the history of these three objects, of when and how and where in space they are, that's not going to help us in predicting where they will be in the future. So that means a historic pattern of these object positions has zero predictive power. That's not going to be of any help at all. So we cannot develop an algorithm to solve this problem, because if we don't have a data which is repeating, a pattern which is repeating, we cannot justify an algorithm for its veracity, for its accurateness. So it just does not exist. There's also no closed loop formula where you can plug in the initial conditions of these three objects in terms of their position in space, their velocity of travel, and their fixation in time. So we don't have a formula where we can plug in these three variables, and lo and behold, if we plug in, say, future date, 5 million years from now, we would know exactly where these three objects are going to be. This is actually on my screen. There are three colors which I've used. I don't know if you're able to distinguish these three colors: red, blue, and green. They signify the three objects. They kind of represent these three objects. And this is their kind of a snapshot of their influence on each other, of their pattern in space and time. So each of these three, this is their graph. If we were to plot their graph in space and time, in 3D space and time, this is what we would get. So for the green object, this is the green graph, for the blue one, and likewise for the red one. You can see how complicated this is, for each of these three objects. Each of these are random. They have random starting conditions, and they exert a gravitational pull on each other. So no human can predict the future of the system. It's just impossible. Okay. And if any one of you budding engineers, and if you can tackle this problem and contribute to the field of mathematics and science, more than welcome. Okay, you will probably be given a Nobel Prize. All right, so feel free to tackle this problem. So what are the characteristics of a 3D system? These are the characteristics. A chaotic system. It's a chaotic system. The past performance is no guarantee of a future result, of future results. The fact is that a past performance can never be a predictive algorithm for the future results. So there's a basis, uncertainty to this whole thing. The fundamental basis of this problem is uncertainty. So this is the biggest concern that an entrepreneur should have. That our past performance, our past business climate and conditions has absolutely no bearing on our future success and the future strategy and the future trajectory that our companies would take or our careers would take. As I said, who imagined 2 months ago that we would be having this webinar over a Zoom call? 2 months ago, 3 months ago, how many of you were using a video conferencing system, except maybe once a year? I would have been physically present in the boardroom or in the seminar room at Ganpat University, and we would have been able to accommodate maybe 100, 150 students, all from the same program and studying at Ganpat University. I guess that probably there could be not more than 5% of the students who would have taken the trouble from coming down from the Mehsana campus even to the premises on SG Highway in the Meridian building. So this is what technology does, and what a pandemic does, or what this kind of a black swan event would do. So it changes the way we interact. And, once we experience this technology, what we are doing today, it's so easy to, to schedule a webinar, to get people together. Yeah, and there are no time constraints. It saves me more than an hour in commute time. So it just makes life so much more efficient. It also takes care of our planet, because, the people driving down to the seminar hall would be consuming so much fuel and giving rise to so many greenhouse gases. So it's a win-win. So the signals, which are the derivatives, and the processes, which are the algorithms we all use to make sense of the business world, no longer get connected to our future success. Okay, so we have to, we cannot say, oh, this is what I did in the past, and this is what I'm, and hence this is what I will do in the future, that I'll use that as a derivative. So if Y is what I've done in the past, then what's the incremental, what's the delta that I should be doing? It's dy by dx. It's not going to work, because that Y itself, that base, the basis on which we have structured our past behavior is no longer valid. So that is it. There's a basis uncertainty. The basis on which we have done this is Y itself is uncertain now. Okay. So dy by dx, that incremental, that delta, doesn't work, and there is no math actually which makes this work. So it's a classic three-body problem. So what do we do in a chaotic system like the one that we are living in right now? We don't even know how long we are going to be in this lockdown stage, whether it's going to be extended beyond May 15. Like Maharashtra already announced day before yesterday that they are going to continue beyond May 15 to the end of May, to May 31st. Okay, we yet don't know in Gujarat where we are headed, but in all likelihood, May 31 seems quite a likely date. So what does it even mean to say that we are entrepreneurs in a chaotic system when we don't have the tools to plan? So, so I was thinking about this, and I thought, maybe this is the way ahead. I don't know whether this is the way ahead, but these are suggestions, and maybe we can think over these and discuss these. The first has, no one has a crystal ball. No one has a crystal ball which can predict the future, like an astrologer. Then the risk balancing strategies have to be put in place. They make a lot of sense in a chaotic system. It's also about budgeting risk agnostically across geographies and sectors, and secondarily about budgeting itself. So if we are spread in various geographies, okay, if we are present in, say, New York City, that's different. If you are present somewhere in Africa which has not yet been touched, maybe some remote country in Africa where the virus has still not spread, then our strategy is different. So it's also about budgeting risk across geographies agnostically, completely without any emotions. So I think that's a very important way to behave. The second is, in my opinion, is that we have to adopt a classic game theory strategy for dealing with uncertain systems. So game theory is also a branch of mathematics, very, very widely applied in economics. So these MBA students, whomsoever are MBA students or BBA students amongst you today, they will probably relate to what I'm saying, about game theory. It's a simple idea with profound implications. So we try to predict what the opposite person is going to do, and there's a whole math for it, and then that's how we model our own behavior. So what game theory does is, instead of seeking to maximize returns, we seek to minimize our maximum regret. Okay, so if you are given a set of boxes and we are given some probabilities, but the price is very, very high for the box, which has the lowest probability of having the right answer, what do we do? Do we think that, okay, there's a 1% probability that if I open this box, I might win because that would contain the right answer, but there is only a 1% probability, versus whether there is a 99% probability of a certain box giving the right answer, but the price is just 1 rupee. Okay, so game theory defines these two boundaries, and then I would say, well, yeah, 1 rupee is of no interest to me. Why would I want to play this game for a rupee? So let me select the box which has 50% probability of giving the right answer, and the price is also not 1,000 rupees, which I would get in the box of 0 probability or 1% probability. Neither is it 1 rupee, which I would get in the box of 99% probability. but it is 500 rupees or 550 rupees or 100 rupees or whatever it is. So this is how we do game theory. It's in very simplistic terms. Of course, the math is a little more complicated, but this is what essentially it means. So it's not that, so most of us, our maximum regret may not be ruinous loss. Plenty of people whose maximum regret is not keeping up with the Joneses. So in fact, from a business model perspective, it is not keeping up with, whose maximum regret is not keeping up with the Joneses. That means it's not keeping up with your neighbors. Okay, if my neighbor got a fancy car and I'm not, that's my maximum regret. It's not what I have, but what I don't have and what others have. It's also not about only what I don't have. It's about what I don't have, but somebody else has. That is maximum regret. So our human psychology is wired towards that. So if you translate that into business terms, it is, we need to be sincerely and painfully honest with our sources of regret, and we should model our business strategy accordingly. Is our maximum regret of losing out on the competition? I mean, losing out against the competition, that, okay, somebody made more progress. Is that our maximum regret? Or is our maximum regret, not doing business in an ethical way? What is our maximum regret? That we need to examine, go inside ourselves and examine ourselves. And then we target our business strategy and our business model, our behavior, our customers, all of that results from that fundamental question about what is the source of our maximum regret. And for this, we have to be honest with ourselves. So if we can be this honest with ourselves, then the third suggestion is to reconsider our approach to computer directed strategies. So since this program is also organized by the Center for Computer Studies, by the Institute of Computer Studies, Computer Technology, that's why we it would not have been appropriate not to have computers and something to do with computers in this talk. So, but we have to learn to use computers in an anthropomorphic way, where we treat them like a smarter, faster human. We set them loose in a vast field of historical data to search for patterns and algorithms. Okay. So it's a snipe hunt, right? Massive processing power, squeezing the juice out of an inductive orange. So you say, okay, all of you have learned about induction in your high school math, 11th and 12th standard mathematics. You say, okay, something is true for n equal to 0, for n equal to 1, and for any n of n. Then it is true for all of n, for all n. So that is induction, right? So we squeeze that inductive orange for whatever it is worth, and the orders of magnitude higher processing powers that quantum computing will bring, because quantum computers are still not available commercially, and they are still kind of targeted only to a specific problem. They still are not able to take on generic approaches. So once they start doing that, a deductive approach, instead of an inductive approach, then we have a game changer. But of course, we first have to realize that since we cannot have historic data predicting a 3D chaotic system, a 3D body issue or a chaotic system, for example, we don't know, what the future is going to be once the economy improves or opens up after a year or two, whether the world is ever going to go back to what it was prior to Jan 2020, but in most 99% probability that it won't. So that's why what's going to be the new normal or the next normal. So the brains of bees and humans are hardwired for algorithms. If we have been used to doing a thing in a certain way, we will continue to do things in that same way. And hence oftentimes we self-destruct because we don't take in inputs from our environment, because we said, okay, we have been doing this for 1,000 years. The bees will follow their same path that they have been following for honey, wherever they are coming from, hundreds of kilometers away. And even if there is a gas leak in that, factory like LG Polymers, they will not learn to take a different path, and then they will die, right? Because they are flying through that noxious atmosphere. Okay, so we are all hardwired for algorithms. So we see patterns where sometimes patterns don't even exist. Humans and bees, we do both species, humans and bees, we do poorly in environments where derivative signals are plagued by a basis uncertainty, like that in a 3D problem, a 3D system, a 3 object system, which is essentially a chaotic system, or even the current environment, world environment. We don't know when the borders are going to be reopening. We don't know about supply chains. People always thought, that supply chains should be wherever people are able to manufacture things most efficiently. But this whole pandemic thing has turned that thing on its head, that, geography is history that has completely been turned on its head by this pandemic. So geography is no longer history, right? So, so where derivative signals are plagued by a basis uncertainty, we are completely lost, just like bees. Every bee in the world will follow its hardwired algorithms even unto death, and most humans will too. So but humans have the capacity to think beyond biological and cultural programming. But we have to work at it. So first thing is, where do we lose good people? When they convince themselves that they have found the answer. When I convince myself that what I'm presenting to you is the right answer, that is when I've lost myself. That's when we lose good people. So this, such good people, we lose them and they lose themselves when they think that they have the right answer. Either that person could be a charismatic person, like Hitler or Mussolini during the Second World War, or so many others in the world in systems, in authoritarian systems that we know today around the world. There is a charismatic person and more dangerously still, that charismatic person has a charismatic idea. So in a chaotic system, where no answer exists, in a chaotic system like business and stock markets, yes, but chaotic systems are also like politics. So, in politics also, we don't know what will make a good leader, which political party is going to win the election. There's also like a very, very strong chaotic system. We don't know about the pulls and pushes. Who would have imagined that in Maharashtra, 3 different political parties would be governing? Who would have imagined? 6-8 months ago, none of us would have had a clue, because these 3 political systems are completely different, had completely different ideologies. But when their environment changed, they learned to, swing with the punches, and they came up with a new paradigm, with a new strategy. Okay. So they learned to change themselves, So they learned to think beyond their cultural programming and their historical programming, beyond their biological programming. So they had to work for it. Then there is this, totalitarian regimes. Fortunately, we are very fortunate to live in a democratic setup like that we have in India. But by nature, the answer is totalitarian. Why? Because a generally closed form solution. There's only one answer. It's a closed form solution. That's the practical definition of totalitarian thought. We are hardwired to want the all-encompassing algorithm. Why? Because we have an algorithm, we plug it in, and voila, here's the answer. We don't have to work at it. We don't need to change ourselves. And that's why it's very difficult to resist. It's very difficult to care about justice, to care about liberty, and justice for all. To resist, that's the answer. So you have to resist your impulses of how you have done business in the past. The past is no predictor of your future success. And because the future is not what it used to be. So the next few minutes of my presentation, let's be more specific. So I painted a general preamble about where we are heading, and now a few more specific thoughts on the shape of the next normal. I have the following important elements, which I think, obviously time only will tell, because none of this, as I said, no one has a crystal ball with which they can predict what is going to happen even 2 weeks from now. Forget 2 months or 2 years or 20 years. So distance is back. So when we thought that geography is history, now we have realized that distance is back. It's very important to have your supply chains in this, in a geographically close location. And then there is resilience and efficiency. You need resiliency and efficiency in the systems that you build, whether they are supply chain, whether they are customer relationships, whether they are internal HR systems, your IT systems, everything, they will need resilience and efficiency. Then, of course, we have the rise of the contact-free economy. We see all of us, 200 odd people, we are seeing each other, talking to each other, and interacting with each other, but we have no contact with each other, right? We are communicating through silicon. We are not communicating with each other through carbon. So the rise of the silicon economy, there will be more government intervention in the economy. Government will be more implicated in the survival of business. There will be more government action and support. So when obviously when government is supporting industry, it will want more control and more intervention, that the reason why it supported the industry in the first place, that reason is justified by the actions of industry. So the governments everywhere will want more control. There will be more scrutiny of business by citizens and by government, because taxpayers' money, which will be supporting many businesses like airline industry, hospitality industry, restaurants and hotels and all such. So many industries which will be very, very badly affected, retail, grocery stores. So all of that, it's not going to come back. Even if there's a lockdown, if the lockdown is improved, how many of us are going to go back to a mall in any time soon? Even if the mall is open, we're all going to be suspicious, and we'll not try to avoid going to a mall, or a place where a lot of people are going to be congregating. How many of us are going to be seeing a movie, a film in a multiplex anytime soon, even after the lockdown is removed and the multiplexes are open? We are used to seeing now on Netflix, so we will hopefully, so that's going to change customers, behavior very, very strongly. There'll be changing industry structures, changing consumer behavior. We just discussed that, changing market positions and sector attractiveness also. Like if the hospitality sector and travel sector was very, very attractive last few years, it will have to rethink or where it wants to go from now, or where it can go from now. But there are always silver linings, and the thing is, because we are humans and we can work unlike bees, we can change our cultural and biological programming. We have the ability within us to find silver linings. So every cloud has a silver lining. For example, in today's circumstances, the education industry has a huge silver lining. They're laughing all the way to the bank. Netflix is laughing all the way to the bank. Spotify is laughing all the way to the bank. Music industry. So online education, huge. I think every university and high school and school, they've moved to Zoom and Google Classrooms and Google Meets and Microsoft Teams and everything. So many of my meetings these days are conducted within my office on Microsoft Teams and Zoom. So so we are changing. In fact, in our office, we have taken a decision that, look, at every department head, I've said, give me a list of people whom you think can work from home, even after everything is normal, after 1 year, 2 years, whenever, 10%, eventually 25%, 40%, 50%, and maybe they may need to come to office once in a while, but, it's going to be great for everyone, for people, for staff, for getting work, for commuting, for the planet, everything. So much of efficiency will be built into the system. So it just needs, so that's the silver lining of the pandemic. It will change the way we think, and it will force us to new habits, which we have not tried before, and which we find, well, why didn't I try this all these years? So, we are creatures of habit, but something like this forces us to look at new ways of doing things. So in the mid-1990s, we thought there was a death of distance. The global supply chains were put into existence. We had web, the internet, and telecom technologies, which made it possible to communicate and work in ways that we couldn't have imagined, and that really dramatically reduced the value of being in the same room together at the same time. Global supply chains, very, very complex. They are able to just deliver just-in-time products thousands of miles away, and that's a routine thing. Nobody now bats an eyelid. And when it first started out 20 years ago, 25 years ago, people were still working out. They were still ironing out the kinks in the system. But now it's like working flawlessly. Cross-border trade reached new heights, over the last 20, 25 years. The world's middle class took to travel as if there was no tomorrow. You could see people traveling, Chinese, Japanese, Indians, Africans, everyone, Europeans, everyone traveling across, and it propagated a huge travel boom in the travel industry, which consists of hotels and aviation and rail journeys and restaurants and everything, museums, everything, retail. They all built huge networks based on this travel boom. So the second thing which will be tested will be resilience and efficiency. The ability to be, companies need to have the ability to absorb a shock and to come out better than the competition. Only then, see, our companies, the Bakeri Group is 60 years old and counting, 61 years actually. We obviously we have had our share of ups and downs, and we have had our shares of pandemics and earthquakes and financial shocks and supply shocks and so many over the course of the last 60, 65 years. So, but what makes a resilience? What builds in resiliency in the system? So that kind of a thing we need to give. How to build resiliency in our system, in our companies, in whatever we are doing, in our educational systems, in our cultural systems, in our health systems, in the way government is run. All of that needs resiliency, and all of that we have found that many of our systems, public systems, they're all insufficiently resilient. We are seeing that our domestic systems, our health systems are falling apart. Health systems, the government health systems, public health systems, monitoring, distribution networks, they're all falling apart. Everything is falling apart. So, but it's not enough for companies to tweak their business models, to build resilience. We need to completely rethink the way we do business, rethink how our supply chains operate, rethink how we want to build backup and safety plans. This crisis has revealed weakness in succession plans as well. We always thought about a succession plan. When companies thought of a succession plan, large multinationals and national level corporates and even small and medium enterprises, well, yeah, so my dad is running the country, succession plan. Well, yes, Pavan is going to be running the company. But that is not what a succession plan is anymore. This pandemic has revealed that. What if the chief technology officer or the chief marketing officer or the chief operations officer, and not just a chairperson, has suffered an infection and has to be quarantined, or worse, it could be mortal. So how do we build resilience throughout the company? So, for example, we heard that our own chief minister had to be quarantined. Our own municipal commissioner of Ahmedabad is currently under quarantine. So do we have enough resiliency in the system that, once these leaders are quarantined, will the system still function? So that's just the kind of resiliency that we need to build in all our systems. What if tomorrow 20% of the doctors and the healthcare professionals come down with infections? 20%. Already, we are running short of healthcare professionals massively all across the world, right? But what if they start coming down, and they have already started coming down in places like New York City and elsewhere? So that's a huge crisis as well. Is there enough resilience in the system? Are there enough hospital beds, enough ventilators, enough masks? All of that, enough hydrochloroquine, enough medication, enough clean bed sheets, enough orderlies, enough nurses, enough attendants, the works. Even enough sanitation fluids and cleaning fluids. So resilience has to become as important to the strategic thinking as cost and efficiency. And strategic planning, succession planning has to be much more than the corner suite, the chairman of the managing director's suite, his office. It has to be much deeper, much more deep. The rise of the contact-free economy, all of us, 60% of all jobs will be automated, because many companies which are currently labor dominated, they will already try to automate their processes. Like in Japan, where they have a huge labor crisis since the last 30 years, 80%, 90% of the factories are run completely by, are completely automated, and you will only hardly see a couple of humans in a factory producing 1 million cars a year. So automation will probably, 60% of all jobs could see more than 30% of their key tasks being automated over the next 10 years. And this could affect half the 800 million jobs, a significant percentage of the world employment that we have today. 400 to 1 billion jobs would be affected. And many kinds of jobs, of course, are not automatable, but the trends are unmistakable, and probably irreversible, that whatever jobs which can be automated will be automated, if not today, over the next few years. So e-commerce also, the trend was already there, but this pandemic, Corona, accelerated the e-commerce shopping habit. So it proved to be a decisive turning point. Digital commerce, telemedicine, and automation for these three industries. There's obviously more government intervention in the industry, in the economy. So we already discussed that. So there'll be also a push to redefine global public health ecosystem, because what we have experienced in the last 3 months is that this virus doesn't know borders, right? International or state borders. So what started in China spread to the rest of the world in a matter of weeks. Okay, so health care facilities and departments across the world will have to coordinate their efforts. There's no sense in containing the epidemic in Ahmedabad if Baroda is not going to be doing it, or Bombay is not going to be doing it, or New York is not going to do it, if Brussels or Berlin is not going to do it, you know. So we are all interrelated. So because the whole world economy is very interrelated, and looking at the amount of travel that we do, you know, it's so easy for the pandemics to spread, and even supply chains. There'll be more scrutiny for business, of course, because there'll be much more government intervention and support. So even from the public standpoint of view, right now we were only looking at, okay, how environmentally green is a company, but now the other things will also come to be playing a major role. That is a company doing a proper thing by its employees and customers in these times of pandemics. The triple bottom lines would include not of profit, people, and planet. You know, so far they were this triple bottom line, and these will become even more important just than the shareholder value, employees and communities, and dealing ethically with suppliers. All of this will play a major role in the company's valuation. Changing industry structures, consumer behavior, market position, and sector attractiveness. We already discussed that the travel, tourism, and hospitality sectors will be subject to long-term changes in business and individual travel preferences. As millennials, especially you who are participants today, and Generation Z, is basically anyone in the age group of 17, 18 to 30, you know, their attitudes, and 35, their attitudes will be changed profoundly in ways that are hard to predict, you know. So there'll be increasing health awareness and a desire to live more healthily. All of us have experienced the pleasures of eating at home. You've not been to a restaurant in 2 months. We have been eating homemade food. You've not had a pizza delivered to our home in 2 months. So all of that is good for the system, for our health. So, you know, some of us have started appreciating the benefits of, you know, slowing down, bonding with friends and family, meeting meeting them digitally, and spending more time at home with children, with parents, with grandparents. And not only that, but how many of you have grandparents who were not even aware of what Skype or Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Google Meet was 2 months ago? Most of us probably have a grandparent who has used one of these 3 video conferencing systems in the last 2 months to connect with their children and grandchildren, you know, and with their friends. Our grandparents have started using Zoom. So these silver linings, I think, I mean, sorry for having taken so much time, Professor Mitra, but I know I've extended. But finding the silver linings, necessity is the mother of invention, and that will continue. We will all learn new ways of connecting. We'll be having more flexible workforces. Business will be forced to do things in a simpler manner, in a less expensive manner, in a faster way. There'll be innovations in biotech, vaccine development, and regulatory regimes also. You know, we will not have to wait 5 years before a new vaccine. It will probably be out in a year. Typically, a new vaccine, for it to be certified by regulatory authorities worldwide, it would take 2 to 5 years. This time, we don't have that luxury of time. So even government authorities and regulatory authorities will have to really short circuit their processes, make them more efficient, and give approvals for commercial production as quickly as possible. You know? And so they will short circuit from 2 years to maybe 1 year or 9 months. They're hoping so. So the result should be a more resilient, responsive, and efficient health system. So, and all of these 5 points, you know, these are all part of the silver linings. What good has come out of this pandemic? But of course, these silver linings are thin compared to the catastrophe, the health catastrophe, the tragedy that has been unfurled on the world, on the global stage, you know, in a worldwide. But so we need critically to reconstruct for the future and not solve the problems that we have solved in the past, because they're completely new problems to solve. The next normals are going to be perhaps less prosperity, slower growth, widening inequality, bloated government bureaucracies, and rigid borders. You know, countries will lock down. They've already locked down. 90% of the world today is locked down. You can't go from one country to another. 80 or 90% of the world today doesn't allow it doesn't allow outsiders to come in unless you're a citizen. Hopefully we'll have a burst of innovation and productivity, which will result in more resilient industries, smarter government at all levels, and the emergence of a reconnected world. But nothing is inevitable, right? I mean, the outcome is probably more likely to be a mix of these various things. But all we have right now is optimism, is the true moral courage, which, you know, these golden words were spoken 100 years ago in the 1918, 1920 by a British explorer and adventurer called Ernest Shackleton, who went to the South Pole and never came back because he got lost there. And these are his words: optimism is true moral courage. So let's keep this in our minds. And these are the qualities which are needed more than ever, because leaders have to make these decisions that are going to shape the next normal. And these are going to be very, very tough decisions. And as entrepreneurs, you will be making these decisions when you have your own companies, as students, when you become entrepreneurs over the next 20, 30 years, 10, 20, 30 years, whatever it takes for you. If you get the entrepreneurial bug and run your own companies, you will have to keep this lesson in mind and strategize your companies and your business decisions accordingly. With that, I would like to end my talk, and a very, very big thank you to all you participants and faculty members and parents for listening to me so patiently for what ended up to be a very, very long talk. So forgive me for that, but I hope you took something out of it. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, sir. We can definitely proceed to the question and answer round, sir.
Before that, I'd like to add, thank you, Bakeri sir, for very inspiring and very positive speech, and along with the slides. And I was reminded of Shiv Khera's prayer from his book. And he wrote in the book that every day morning before I leave the home, I make that prayer. So the prayer goes like this: God grant me serenity to accept things I cannot change. Grant me courage to change things I can, and wisdom to differentiate between the two.
Yes.
And your entire diction has brought out the entire phenomena behind it. And yes, this is the time when an entrepreneur can talk about positivity, and that's where
We have lost you. We can't hear you.
you are thankful to you for sharing your Remy, now you can take the questions if there are any. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, sir, I was just going through your entire speech, on the three-body problem in this chaotic situation, as well as your suggestions, the four main core suggestions which you gave on risk balancing strategies, classic game theory, computer-directed strategies, and also the need to accept the new normalcy. I'm definitely sure that it will be very much beneficial for our participants. So just out of curiosity, before we actually go on to the Q&A round, I would just like to ask you a question, sir. How much necessary it is to have a formal education with concentration of entrepreneurship and startups? And is it really beneficial for students at this point of time?
I think, Professor Mitra, this is a wonderful time for students to gather as much knowledge as they can, because, a lot of times we need to have structure, especially more so now. We need to know things like, for example, we need to know about game theory, right? For example, I mean, I'm not saying that is essential, but for example, so you need to know how in these kind of formal concepts which are taught in a classroom, pardon me, virtual classroom, they affect, your thinking and your thought, you're taken to new directions, So I think formal education doesn't have to be at a university. I mean, you can learn on your own, but, that's very difficult unless you're a special kind of student. It's very difficult to be self-taught, I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but you need to have a special discipline, right? For most of us, a university or a school is, is recommended. And I think it's it's more recommended now than ever before. So I think it's very, very essential to have a mathematical and a scientific background of business, a scientific, business principles, accounting principles, finance principles, all of that is taught in a business program. I think more than ever now that's going to be put to the test.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir, for your really inspiring and very conclusive words. We have, I guess, in the Q&A box, we have total 6 questions. So we have Jeet, who is asking, sir, can you explain it by giving a real example? I guess he must be mentioning during the time of game theory that was taken when game theory slide was being going on. Yes, sir.
Okay, I don't see that in the chat. I don't see that query in the chat.
Oh, sir, you will be seeing it in the Q&A box.
Okay.
Next to the, yes. Next to the participant? Yes, yes.
Something which I can combine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for example, I know when demonetization happened, it happened out of the blue, right? We were given just 15 days or 12 days to exchange all our notes, and the whole business changed, especially businesses which depend on, say, like hospitality or groceries or such kind of businesses. They depend on cash. Also, a lot of real estate those days, 3-4 years ago, used to be not very transparent. So that came out. That was a black swan event, But we knew in our company over the last 30-40 years, that our business strategy, what is our maximum regret? What would be our maximum regret? I touched upon that point in game theory. What is our maximum regret? Our maximum regret when we defined ourselves as people and as a company, as a people running a company, over the last 60 years or 50, 60 years ago, it was baked in our DNA, that our maximum regret was not to do the right thing. That if we did not do the right thing, that would be our regret. That if we found out that, look, we did not do the right thing by our suppliers, by our customers, to government, if we fell short on any of this count or or on quality, even if our customer didn't know that, okay, this is not of good quality, just because it looks nice, it's painted well, it's finished well, but we know that there is not enough steel in that. A lot of your participants today are civil engineering students, right? So just because the customer is not going to know that there is not enough steel, but that it is, a building is not safe. It may be safe under most circumstances, but what if an earthquake came? And in 2001, an earthquake did come, and we did have massive building failures, right? So, so I think that is building in advance of a pandemic or of a black swan event. So that's game theory. How are you going to deal with your customers? What's the impact of your behavior and ethical behavior with customers? So if you build an ethical business, one of the queries was, okay, if customers cannot go to site, how will they be buying? How will they take a buying call? So that again, technology plays. The reputation that has been built by sacrificing, doesn't mean that when we decided as a blueprint of our company that our maximum regret would be to be dishonest, that we don't want to be dishonest. We want to be very ethical and transparent and fair in all our dealings. There were lots of sacrifices that had to be made and which are still being made in terms of business growth, in terms of profits, but that's a call we took because, as I said, we said our maximum regret is to be dishonest. So that will not give us happiness, So that's a practical example of game theory, which was one of the queries, and also about customers not being able to go to a site, real estate site, and take a buy call. Sooner or later, we'll all have to learn new normals, right? Customers will have to learn new normals. So they're not going to go without a house. If they need a house, they need a house, right? In fact, more so than ever now. If they were living 5 in a room, if they can, interest rates are going to be further revised downwards, they will think now is the best time to buy a house, right? So we'll use technology to reach out to them. The sacrifices we have made over the last 50, 60 years, and developers like us have made over the last 50, 60 years to build a reputation that will count more than ever before in a digital world, where people will have to learn our customers will have to learn to trust us, right? So
absolutely,
so that was a real life example, which also has applications for the last query, which was on real estate. One of the last queries, which was on real estate.
Yes.
And one other query was, can artificial intelligence help easing real estate projects? Well, it can help us reach out to customers. And now that customers will be forced to use digital platforms more exhaustively than before, certainly, it can help us predict customer behavior. So I think I would assume, yes, that in predicting consumer behavior, it will help us target customers virtually, because we can't target them physically since they are not able to come to sites. So instead of having 100 people at the site, we can organize just one-to-one meetings over a virtual call or a physical site visit. If there is no one else except the customer and the sales rep, and they maintain social distancing, then we will target, hopefully one can target customers more intelligently. And the other thing is sales also we touched base. Of course, on construction, we actually need to physically build. So we need some engineers, some supervision, but that also can be done using computer vision and also automating more. Unfortunately, in India, we have so much labor, and capital cost is still very expensive. So I don't suppose that automation is going to play a major role, at least in the next 10 years. It will start playing a role, People start thinking along, but it's not going to move the needle a lot in terms of automating construction, hardcore construction. But in other activities, sales activities, finance, none of those tasks can be automated. Yeah, they can go digital. And the other query is, I think,
even we have one query is there in the chat box, wherein we have Professor Rakesh sir from Egerton University, Kenya. So sir is saying, taking a note of highlighted attributes of the possible next new normal, which we all are discussing, can we say this is a deliberate effort by multinationals?
Multinational, meaning a deliberate effort to capture our economy on the part of multinationals. Is that the query? Let me go to the chat box.
Yeah, in the chat bot.
No, I would not agree, because I think nobody knew how this thing was going to pan out. And multinationals more than ever are dependent upon supply chains scattered all over the world. They have perfected the art of distributing supply chains across the world, for efficiencies and costs and scale. So in fact, they will be very, very highly disrupted. They will have to rethink their whole business model, bring supply chains closer, spread the risk. So they are going to spend a lot of money doing that. And in fact, there'll be more nimble operators who will benefit. Like I read in the papers this morning that somebody in Rajkot has made a machine to make N95 face masks, which we didn't have in India. We used to import those machines from China, from Japan, and from South Korea. And across the world, these machines were imported. Even the US did not have any manufacturer of its own. So, so that can in fact be a blessing in disguise for local companies, because now they don't have to compete with multinationals, right? And with Chinese companies. So I would think that, no, I don't think this was a ploy, a deliberate strategy on the part of multinationals to usher in a pandemic. Even they had no clue of how this thing was going to pan out. So, the query is that, one is that, can we predict past, present, and future from formulations and equations? We discussed the three-body problem, and that was only related to three bodies, and even there we cannot predict the future. See, one can't predict the past and present because we are living in the past. We are living in the present, so we don't need to predict it. And the past has already happened, so we don't need to predict it again, because we already know about the past. What you predict is something that you don't know about, something which hasn't happened. But if you're talking of the future from formulation and equations, no, we cannot do that. Time travel, going into the future, is still a physical impossibility. And there is no equation or formulation, and that's what I was trying to portray in the three-body problem. So you have my answer there, that we cannot. And the other query is the supply chain in global markets. What steps can one take? So we need to have enough resilience in the system. We discussed that about the 7 steps that one needs to take. So build enough resilience that if something happens in China, we are not caught short. So we'll need to build in more resilience. We'll need to build alternatives, and they may not reduce the cost. They will perhaps increase the cost, because now instead of giving everything to a large manufacturer in China and negotiate cost, we may have to distribute it over 2 or 3 geographies, and that might end up increasing the costs. You know. Then we discuss supply chain, and somebody has asked about the profession of architecture, whether there's a silver lining in that. Yes, I would think so, because now, you know, developers and clients will learn to work with architects virtually. You know, they will not insist on a physical site visit or a physical client meet. That can all happen virtually. Drones will be able to give a very good photograph and an image of the site and the contours and everything and of the neighborhoods. So architects also don't need to physically go unless they want to feel the vibrations of the land itself. Okay, so I think it's a great boon for professions like architecture, which can learn to, which can actually work offline. Which can work digitally, online. So I think it's a great boon. Just like education, it's a winner. Banking also, people will rely more on online banking rather than going to a bank, because they just they don't feel comfortable going to a bank. So I think customer site visit is a must before granting the loan and monitoring the account. In real estate, yes, but a lot of loans are given for cars and other things, other consumer durables. For that, you just, Amazon gives loans, and so many institutions can give a loan. So I think those issues will not be huge in those industries. For client site visits, for real estate, from the part of a bank, one can always tell the client, developers can tell the client, or banks can invent, they also want to do business, right? They want to loan against property because that's the safest kind of loan. The collateral is huge, especially a home loan. So it cannot be taken away anywhere. The car depreciates, the washing machine conks out or can be stolen, the car can be stolen, but a house is not going to be stolen, right? It never depreciates. So they are more comfortable loaning against that. And there's always going to be a demand for a home. Because, in India especially, we have 20 crore people who need to be housed. The challenge for India is how to house them economically, because we are still very high cost. Those people can't afford homes. But the other thing is that we can send images from drones to monitor the sites. Those would have GPS locations in real time, so no one can fool the system. So I think a lot of technology can solve these pain points, Is it necessary to have knowledge of entrepreneurship for starting a new business, or do you need experience in starting a new business? I think Bill Gates, when he started out Microsoft, didn't have any experience. Neither did Sergey Brin and Larry Page when they started out Google. But they still had 4 years of engineering and computer science. And so did Bill Gates. He had a college degree. He was a Harvard dropout, but he still went to Harvard. He had the ability, and he was homeschooled. So yeah, formal education does play, an important role. I think most people would really benefit from a formal education. There may not be many Dhirubhai Ambanis who can make do without a formal education. And I don't know whether today, even if he was alive, whether he would be successful in starting Reliance in the 21st century. Okay. So otherwise, why would he have sent Mukesh Bhai and Anil Bhai to Harvard and Stanford, Wharton and some other top university? So they both went to the US to get, higher education there. What else? Education is a winner. We spoke about that. You have to find which part of education you are really interested in, where your passion lies. So, but education is a winner from the pandemic. In fact, now they are going overboard. They are using, governments, the parents are complaining that the schools are burdening the students with a lot of work just because they can connect with them throughout the day. So I think we have gone to the other extreme. So the pendulum has swung the other way. So, but education is like perhaps the biggest winner, and music companies and film, film streaming companies like Netflix and Amazon Prime and Apple TV.
Absolutely true, sir.
So one question is, how do you calculate the risk factors for any business? See, they vary from industry to industry, from company to company, whether you are a small enterprise, a medium enterprise, or a large enterprise, whether you are a proprietorship, whether you are professionalized. So as if you're professionalized, then as I said, one risk is, if some of your top people, not just you as the managing director or the chairperson of the company, get infected, but your top technology officer, your top marketing officer, how do you handle that kind of a risk? So you have to build in enough resiliency in the system rather than worry about calculating the possibility of risk, the probability of risk. One needs to know what the risks are and build resilience in the system. So I think that would be my answer. I didn't answer directly because you said, is there a possible way to calculate the possibility of risk, right? A probability of risk. No, the three-body problem clearly demonstrates that we can't. Okay. So, but we know how to build a resiliency, that given that there could be another pandemic or something similar, we know now what is needed. I mean, not only for companies, right? Across, for healthcare systems, for government departments, everyone, municipal departments, sanitation departments, pharma companies. Start exporting and importing medical devices. There's a business, depends on what kind of devices. So please do your homework, do some survey, find out the cost benefits, a need. Survey is very important. So I'm supposing that your MBA program is emphasizing on the value of surveys and understanding who your customer is and what she's going to be paying, willing to pay for your product. So please, do some research. Yeah,
absolutely true, sir.
On real estate prices going down, they may go marginally down, maybe 10% at the high end. At the medium end, at the low end, there was hardly any room. The prices were stagnant for the last 4 years, in spite of inflation being 7 to 10% every year. So current, in real terms, the prices are today 30, 40%, 50% less than what they were in 2015 or 2016 even. So, and while salaries have gone up approximately 7 to 10% every year over the last 4-5 years, So the ability to buy a home now versus 4 to 5 years ago is significantly higher. In fact, there's a survey which was carried out, or research which was carried out by, I think, Knight Frank, which says that a cost of a home 4 years, 5 years ago was 4.2 times the average median income in India, and now it is 2.8 times. So already homes are 50% cheaper than what they were in 2015, and this is as of 2 days ago, last week. Okay, if prices kind of come down by 5-10%, they would be even more affordable. But my guess is prices may not come down a whole lot, but interest rates come down by 7-8%, then obviously, or 10% even, they've already come down. So you have already got your home 10% cheaper because your EMIs will be 10% lower, right? So you already have that correction in interest rates. So if you are
absolutely true, sir. Yes, right? Sir. And in Q&A, is there anything left? I guess, sir, we have actually covered all the questions, I guess.
One question, what has the collapse of distance since the 90s undermined geography, the concept of space? This is Dr. Richard from Egerton University.
Yes.
I don't know where that is. It's overseas. Seems like in Canada.
In Kenya. Yeah, it's in Kenya, sir. Yeah.
Place, the name of the place, Wambongo, seems Canadian. As I said, geography is probably going to shrink. Distances are going to shrink, because we'll have to rethink supply chains, build resilience in the system. But in certain cases like online education, geography is still history, right? In fact, distances have increased in certain professions, like online education, film streaming, and those kind of things. But in other professions, supply chains, it has shrunk. So in manufacturing, that has shrunk to some extent. So it will shrink.
In fact, one question we have from Jitu Tirthiani, what do you say about intrapreneur mindset during job? Because many times it is required for decision making and company policy. So is it favorable or not?
Yes, I think a lot of large companies already have that, like Microsoft and Google. They already have entrepreneurship. They encourage entrepreneurship. In fact, they encourage their scientists and researchers or workers and employees to come up with something, take an idea, and then they fund that. They actually fund it into a company. They have a stake in that company, and that's run as a separate business. So entrepreneurship was always there, especially in the West, especially in the United States. In India, we don't have so much of that happening because we don't encourage that sort of behavior. That cultural mindset is not yet there in our companies. So if you have a Reliance, a large company, or a Tata, you wouldn't have much entrepreneurship there because it's not highly encouraged, because the companies themselves would take the idea and make it bigger without floating a separate company where the entrepreneur also has a stake. So.
Yes, sir. So true. So I guess all the questions are being very well reflected upon on your answers. I would request all the panelist member to please turn on their video screen. We could have a group click at the end. Akshar Bhai, if you could just take the photo. Okay. It is our honor and we are really delighted, and it's like the entire session was a debrief about so many things and so many domains, right from the real estate structure to infrastructure structure, then to new normal, the pandemics. We are really glad to have this enriching session, sir. And to all of my participants over here, thank you so much for joining over here. And we will be continuing this web series, and wherein we bring around very famous, established and experienced entrepreneurs, and we uncover their stories, their challenges, their life cycles towards you. Thank you so much. Stay well, stay happy. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks. Okay.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaskar, sir.
Namaste. Namaste. Bye-bye.
We can stop broadcasting. Huh. Okay. Maulik bhai, we can close it, right?
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
हाँ, एक कॉल आवे छे मने.